What's up guys, Rhen here coming to you with another 7 Deadly Sins Grand Cross video. Today we're talking about the new Guild Boss Einek and what you need to do to own him in the face. Let's go. Alright guys, so today we're going to talk about the new Guild Boss Einek. We're going to go over the strats, the comps, which units are good, what the general strategy is, and how to punch this demon in the face. Not sure if he's a demon for sure 100%. Doesn't quite say that on the tooltips, so we're going to call him a demon or just a general bad guy. I do want to say I've tried to keep this video short and to the point. That being said, there are a couple of important tips kind of sprinkled throughout this that may not seem like a big deal, but they make a big difference on your final score. So I would recommend please don't skip through this. I don't want you guys to miss these little tips which don't seem like a big deal, but again, if you don't do them, your final score is going to suffer pretty significantly. So with that, let's go. But before we also get too much into it, I would like to say, if you are looking at this guild boss, we're only a couple days into this guild boss. A couple days as in like 5 or 6 days in. We've played around with it just a little bit, and I'll show you what strategy I'm using right now. My score is okay. I'm around the 32, 60, 70 range. That being said, I would not invest super heavily into these comps that I'm going to talk about today quite yet. I probably would recommend actually waiting like a week or two. I'll give you some kind of low-hanging fruit that you can score pretty decently this week and next week. But I would give it a week or two. If you don't have a ton of resources to put into this, I would wait until we are 100% sure what the best strategy is going to be before you pour all of your resources into that. I don't want you guys to have to waste your stuff just to find out there's a better way to do it. This is a good way to do it that I'm going to explain for sure. We are working on a couple other strategies that may turn out to be even better. I don't want to publish those yet because I don't want people to waste their resources on that if they don't turn out to be the best. So for now, this strategy is totally solid. Like you see here, I've got pushing 3,300 points. So it's definitely not a sloucher by any means, but I just want to put that out there that there may be another guide coming from me a little bit later if we can turn out this other strategy that works a little bit differently. Alright, so the basic idea, and I'm not going to go through and read you every single skill in the boss because I believe you guys can probably read and you guys know what they do. Let me just say a couple of quick things about this boss. When you look at the scoring on this guild boss, two things should stand out for you. One is HP matters a lot. HP is probably the most important deciding factor in your score on this new Einek guild boss. Damage also matters, but not as much as HP, and then everything else matters less than those two things. So a lot of the focus is going to be on HP, a little bit of focus is going to be on damage. The rest of this stuff is just kind of be in the noise. Yeah, you can use Rupture, you can use Dissolve, you can get a few extra points here and there, but by and large, a vast majority of your points are going to be coming from the HP and the damage. Alright, so let's look at the damage first because this is pretty easy to explain. There's going to be two components to your damage score. The first component is just going to be a scaling component just like the last guild boss. So the more damage you do in your single biggest hit, the more points you get. The big difference is now the slope or the coefficient of this points that you're going to get is a lot lower. So stated differently, much less of your score is weighted on the single biggest attack compared to the last guild boss. I mean, here you can see if you do anywhere between 150,000 and 500,000 on your biggest attack, your points are really only going to change from about 30 points to 100 points. So that's a pretty big swing. You probably are not going to be critting because this boss has huge crit resistance. So really, your damage points on the scaling portion are really not that big. Alright, so the next part of the damage point system is what we call a tiered component, which is if you score anywhere in between if you hit anywhere between certain ranges on your maximum damage attack, you're going to get a flat score point bonus. So for example, if you're between the 100,000 and 200,000 range, it doesn't matter what your actual attack hits for. If it hits anywhere in that range, you're going to get 15 points. You can see here you start off at 3 points, 6 points, 15. If you're between 1 and 200,000, you get 15. If you're above 200,000, you get a flat 50 points. And if you're above 500,000, you're going to get a flat 200 points. So, it will be very difficult to get that 500 points since this bot has such a high crit resistance. But the 200,000 may be achievable if you have good gear and you can set your comp up to get it. If you can't get the 50 points from the 200,000 damage, We'll talk about that here in a second. It's not a huge deal, and you shouldn't sacrifice too much to get it because, again, damage is kind of a secondary concern based on this scoring system. Okay, so when you combine the scaling and the tiered piece, this is what it looks like overall. So if your biggest hit is less than 200,000, you're going to be less than the 90 points. Once you break that 200,000, you're going to get this jump up to this 90-point contribution, and then you're going to go up about 1 point per 5,000 damage above that. If you do manage to get above the 500,000 on a single hit, you will get that nice bump to take you up to the 300-point range, and then after that, it always increases at 1 point per 5,000 damage. So overall, the most common point contribution from damage that we're going to be seeing is somewhere between 50 points and 150 points at the higher end, but more likely between 50 and 100 points, from this damage contribution. Keep that in mind once we start moving to the HP contribution, which we're going to talk about just in a second. Okay, so to contrast with that, take a look at this chart from the HP. As you move left to right, this is showing the total combined HP of your team in battle, including all your passive buffs, all your food buffs, all that stuff. But take a look at this. It's going to be anywhere from like 600 points all the way up to above 1,000 points if you stack HP on your team. Now that's a lot more of a contribution than the damage. So this is kind of the opposite from the last guild boss. There was a little bit of points on the last guild boss from having high HP at the finish, but on this one you can see that's going to be the biggest point component in terms of what's going to drive your score. Okay, so because there's so many points coming from finishing HP at the end of the fight, let's start looking at what we can do to buff that up. Now, this is a pretty flexible boss in terms of there's no required units. You don't have to use any one particular unit, kind of like Jericho was pretty much the best one to use on the last guild boss. On this one, it's a lot more flexible. The monocolored teams tend to do pretty well because of the nature of the passive buffs, which is to say that there are certain characters with passives that give 30% HP boost to all the units of a certain color. So for example, green has Jillian, she gives 30% HP to green. Red has Twigo, blue has Marmus. So if you do a monocolored comp, you definitely want one of your units to be one of these 30% buff units. Now, in terms of which color you should choose, I'll tell you that one color has a particular advantage, which is green, because of the color advantage against the blue boss. That being said, if you don't have any of these green units built up and you have like your mono red team super built up from doing PvP, go with red. Give it a shot, man. I mean, you have nothing to lose. This guild boss is kind of like an equalizer in terms of it doesn't really matter what color you are. Because HP is such a big driver, if you can do HP and you can keep your HP high, you can actually score pretty decently with a pretty wide variety of teams. Because the damage component is weighted so small compared to the HP, it actually provides a little bit more flexibility in terms of what types of comps will be viable using this particular strategy. Okay, there are a couple other ones to mention, such as Arthur and the Green Lizhawk buffs. These are buffs that are not necessarily based on a particular color, but rather, Green Lizhawk is just on any allies. Arthur buff would be on human allies. So if you're doing a human-based team, Arthur's a great choice. If you're doing a red human-based team, he's an even better choice because he's going to stack with that Twigo and stack things up. Same thing with Lizhawk. She's not quite as good as the Arthur in terms of the percentage. She gives 10 versus Arthur's 15, but she's still going to be pretty good, and she fits nicely in with a Jillian. So that's why what I picked to try on this is the green comp, and so what you'll be seeing in this guide is the green, but again, you can really do this with blue or red. Green's going to make it a little bit easier, maybe a little bit less RNG, but if you have those other teams built up really well, feel free to give those a shot. You've got nothing to lose. Okay, take a look at this stuff. Go, there's rank 3 buff. Grimoire's some kind of HP related stat buffing skill thingy. Don't know what it's called. Arthur's tier 3 gold buff. These are all things that are either going to increase your basic stats, which would include your HP, or HP related stats. That's going to boost your HP in battle, and guess what? These don't work. So if you were like me, you're probably thinking, oh, well, I'm just going to stack a Gother buff on here, or maybe I'm going to stack this Arthur buff. Guess what? That's going to increase my HP, and I'm going to get tons more points. Nope, sorry, doesn't work, denied. So kind of the rule of thumb is that if it's a passive ability, it does work and it does contribute towards your final point total for HP. If it is an in-battle ability, such as these buffs that you play from cards, in general, those are things that are not going to contribute to your maximum HP score at the end of the round. All right, so let's jump into the tier list for supports. And by support, we're going to divide this into support and damage dealer, with the idea being that you want one damage dealer to deal that single biggest hit to get you those hit points that we talked about. And everybody else on the team is kind of ancillary. You want them there to have high HP. You want them there to support your team and support your HP and support your biggest damage dealer. So in terms of supports, I'm going to favor the green ones here because I'm using the green team, but I've also listed the blue and red on this chart because they're certainly viable. And in fact, you can even swap in Arthur, for example, into a green team. He's not going to get the boost from Jillian, but he's going to boost everybody else on the team who's a human. So particularly if you're using a human comp, say, for example, you have Jillian, but you don't have a green Lizhawk. You could throw in Arthur instead of green Lizhawk, and he'll work just fine in a pinch. So again, this is pretty flexible. You can kind of mix and match. The idea is that your supports, the primary goal of the supports is going to be to increase your HP. So Jillian, like I said, is going to be great. She's got 30% to green HP. Green Lizhawk is going to be great. She's got 10% to HP related stats, which gives HP and lifesteal. We'll talk about that here in a second. Marmus and Twigo are the corresponding blue and red 30% HP, and then Arthur gives 15% HP related to human allies. Now, once we get below this SS tier, top tier supports, these other ones are not going to be serving the same function, but they could also be useful for different reasons. Because the way the point system works is you get points not based on your maximum HP, you get points based on your remaining XP at the end of the fight. HP, sorry. So something like Green Elizabeth could actually be pretty useful because if you take damage during the fight, she's going to be able to heal you back up at the end, increasing your points that you get. Now, if you find that you can roll resistance on your gear and you don't take any damage, then she's not going to be such a big deal. On the other hand, you can throw in any unit here, so she's not going to be a disadvantage. But if you have somebody with more HP than her, that would probably be a better choice. If you are taking damage and you find that you're not finishing fight at full health, then she's definitely a good choice, particularly if you're running the green comp. Once we get down to the A tier, at this point we're not really looking at HP boosts. Merlin is in a sense an HP booster because she prevents damage. Once we look at Lilia and Guild Thunder, they're not HP boosters, they're damage boosters. So to the extent you're using somebody who's not Escanor, you could always throw Guild Thunder on there and buff up right before you do your ultimate attack. If you are using Escanor, you could throw in Lilia to put amplified damage on the boss before you do your biggest attack. You could really use Lilia with anybody. She's not going to provide any utility, but she will provide that damage booster, which is kind of nice. Again, it's not quite as big as a help as providing more HP, but it definitely gets you a few points. I put Alioni at the bottom for the same reason. He is going to boost your damage. The damage doesn't matter that much, but every point counts. On the other hand, if you have a unit that has a lot more HP than Alioni, it's probably going to be better overall to use that other unit with more HP, even if it means your biggest hit is not going to be as big. Now, if he can push you over that 200 limit, say you're hitting for 198, and he can push you to 205, he might be worth it because there's an extra, 50 points. You're going to go from 35 points to 15 points to 50 points. So that's a bonus of 35 points. That could be worth it if he pushes you over that ledge. If he doesn't, then I would probably not recommend him. Okay, let's look at our damage dealers next. Again, I'm going to focus on the greens. You can really use any unit for this that does a lot of damage. Green's going to have the color advantage, so I'm going to focus on them here, but again, you can use any color you want. Escanor and Valenti, I would say, are definitely the best two. Escanor is good because he does a lot of damage and he has a lot of health. So that's going to be sort of a double help from the score. His high HP stat is actually super helpful in stacking that HP score. If you don't have Escanor or you don't want to use him because you don't like his mustache, I would say be open-minded, but I would also say you can use Valenti if you happen to have her. She has the Rupture on her ultimate, which is going to deal double damage to enemies that have the buff, and this boss is going to have a buff on him pretty much at all times, because you can't dispel his little shield buff thingy. Once you get past that top tier, I would say after that, things kind of fall off a little bit. Again, I'm going to put Lizhawk as an S. She does deal damage, and in a pinch you can use her ult. It's not going to be as good as some of the other options, but you should definitely use her if you have her, because she adds a lot of HP to your team through her passive. Once we get down to the A tier, you can use any of these in a pinch. Again, Gil's on here because he also boosts your damage if you're not using Escanor. Rare Hugo is actually pretty good. He has weak point on his ult, so if you max his ult and you have a debuff on the boss, his ult actually hits really hard. So, if you're looking for a unit to use and you don't have anything with any better HP and you happen to have him built or you can build him easily, he's actually not that bad. He's going to probably be able to get you, that 200k damage with decent gear. But again, he's not going to have as much HP as some of his other options. So if you can put in something that's kind of a flex unit that gives good damage and good HP, that would be the first choice. If you don't have them, I don't know that I would build them just for this. Again, I would pretty much wait to see how this plays out before you, go all in on a particular strategy. I put Jericho down here. She's not very good. She's probably not going to crit because super high crit resistance, and her HP is very low, so she's not going to be a good choice based on what we've already talked about. Okay, so take a look. This is what the green strat will be, ideally. Again, we've talked about how you can swap some of these in and out. The left two are kind of our buff / HP increase engine. We've got Green Liz Hawk for her HP related stats. We've got Jillian. Green Liz Hawk also has a decreased defense of enemy skill. That's not going to be a huge boost because the boss doesn't seem to have a ton of defense or resistance, so it may add like, I don't know, a couple points, but probably not a big deal. But, it's not bad. It's there, sort of just like a little gravy. Escanor is going to be really good. Green Merlin is going to be really good. Her shield's not going to overlap on Escanor, but she is going to give that ult gauge boost, and she's going to be pretty good for what I like to call the FACEROLL comp, the FACEROLL strategy, which I'm going to go over with you guys in a playthrough and show you how this can be super easy if you use Merlin and Escanor together. So in general, you're going to want to use as many HP gear sets as you have. I would put HP gear, HP defense on everybody, maybe except for your biggest damage dealer. If you can get that 200k in an HP set, I would throw HP on your damage dealer as well. So for example, if you have a super good attack rolls on your HP and you have a high ultimate level on either Valenti or on Escanor, if you can get that 200k hit wearing an HP set, 100% put HP set on everybody. If you don't have it, it's totally fine. If you need to use one attack set, I would put an attack set on the damage dealer and HP set on everybody else. If you don't have SSR gear, that's okay. This fight is actually pretty forgiving in terms of that, and really the most important piece is going to be your belt. So if you have an SSR HP belt, that would be the most critical piece to have SSR. If you have a rare rune, that would work just fine. If you have SSR, of course, use it. If you don't, you can totally swap in a rare for the rune. The rest of the pieces can also be rares, so unfortunately this does require a little bit more kind of critical pieces than the last guild boss, but it's not that much more because your attack pieces don't really have to be that good except for on your attack unit. Your defense pieces can be rares. You can use defense rolls or resistance rolls, probably resistance if you're making new gear. And the trick is just figuring out, can you get 200,000 damage with an HP set on your damage dealer? If you can, use HP. If not, go attack. Same thing for your associations. Again, we want HP and defense. You want all defense rolls on your mids. You want all HP rolls on your bottoms. All right, so probably about this time you're getting a little hungry, but you're probably wondering to yourself, hey, what kind of food can I be eating before I go into this fight against Einek? Well, let me tell you. The gentle coasts of California have produced an excellent supply of this juicy tender fruit this year, and you'd be well served to eat some of it before you go into battle. Right, so definitely use HP food. It's going to be the biggest point contribution. It's going to be the biggest help. Use HP food. That's pretty much what you want to do. Next is looking at heal cards. So we're going to look at a playthrough here in a second, and I'm going to talk about strategy. We're going to be doing the FACEROLL comp, so there's not going to be a ton of strategy. But there's going to be a little bit. And if you're using a healer, these are the healing cards you're going to use. So if you have Green Elizabeth, you're going to use your heal card, you're going to use her ult. If you're using Green Liz, a lot of times you can do an ult rush with her. If you're using the FACEROLL comp, you won't need to do that. I'm going to show you the FACEROLL comp here in a second. If you're using Green Hendrickson, bless you for using Green Hendrickson. This man does not get used. He's like the Maytag repairman. Hopefully that doesn't date me. Anyway, he works fine in a pinch. He's a healer. If you don't have Liz, you can use him. He's not going to have as much stats in terms of HP, being an SR unit, so he's not the best choice, but he can work, go with the flow. Again, Merlin's shield is going to be pretty good in terms of avoiding damage, but it's not going to heal up. Okay, take a look at these bottom three cards. You might be thinking to yourself, hey, those are not healing cards. And if you thought that, that's a valid point. However, we're going to, they say if life gives you lemons, you're supposed to do something with those lemons. What we're going to do is we're going to use Green Liz Hawk, and we're not going to use a healer. And so Green Liz Hawk is going to give us lifesteal. And we're going to use basically damage cards to heal up anybody who took damage before the end of the battle. So keep these in mind. This is the Jillian card that does the most damage. Merlin, unfortunately, only one attack card. This is the Green Liz Hawk defense down card. She also has another Pierce attack card, which is pretty good if you need to deal damage as well. We'll talk about this in the playthrough because there's one more important thing you're going to have to do right at the end of your fight that's going to make a big difference in your score. Alright guys, so we're going to go through a playthrough. Again, this is going to be using the FACEROLL comp. Again, this whole guide is about what we're calling strategy number 1, which is the HP strategy. All these tier lists only relate to if you're using this particular strategy number 1. There may be a new strategy in the future, and so this tier list obviously would not apply to that, but if you're running this strategy, these lists should serve you pretty well. We're going to go through a walkthrough this time. This is what I call the FACEROLL comp, and what we're going to be doing is we're going to use an Escanor and Merlin, and we're going to be doing a turn 2 Escanor ult. Now I'm going to be honest, this entire Guild Boss fight I'm going to show you is only about 30 or 40 seconds long. Like I said, FACEROLL comp, FACEROLL battle, it's only going to take about 45 seconds. So buckle up. Alright, so in terms of placement, I would put Green Lizhawk on the left in case you can get a combination on her defense down card. Not that it's a big deal. Step 1, move an Escanor card. Step 2, move it again. Step 3, play 2 Escanor cards. I know I'm moving fast, but just wait. There's one more step, and that's going to be Escanor ult. So you can probably see how FACEROLL this is. It's pretty FACEROLL. Okay, all joking aside, there's actually one more thing that's pretty important to do before you use the ult, and that is we're going to have to look at the health bars for each of our characters, each of our units, to determine who has taken damage on turn 1 and who needs to be healed and how we're going to heal them. This is where those heal cards are going to come into play that we looked at in terms of our key strategies. So if you're using a healer, at this point you would just play your heal card, then you'd ult. That's it. This is the FACEROLL strategy. That's why it's FACEROLL. If you don't have a healer, what you need to do is identify which units need health, and then you're going to need to attack with those units to lifesteal as much of your health back as you can. Now you're going to have to use a little bit of judgment here. If you have one unit with a ton of damage, you may need to use both of their attack cards. If everybody took a little bit of damage, you might want to use one attack card for each person. If your defense and resistance is high enough, you may not have taken any damage from anybody. But if you do need to heal back up, that's what you do. Use your attack cards for lifesteal. That's why it's important to have somebody like Arthur or somebody like Green Lizhawk on the team, so that if you're not using a healer, you can steal that damage back and finish at full health. Okay, so at this point we've lifestolen what we can back, and we're going to go ahead and ult. And there's the hit. So you can see we've broken our 200,000 damage goal. So we're going to get that 50-point bonus. And at that point, that's pretty much it. You now have successfully accomplished the FACEROLL comp. It took you about 60 seconds to do it. There were 4 steps, so if you can count to 4, you can probably play this comp and get a good score on this GB. Congrats. All joking aside though, this Guild Boss is a little different from the last one in that a lot of the score on this Guild Boss happens from work that you do outside the fight. And what I mean by that is a lot of this is based on your gear. It's based on your team comp selection. Once you actually get into their fight, most of your preparation at that point is already done. And there's not a whole lot of decisions to be made inside the fight itself if you're using this FACEROLL comp. I honestly like this comp a lot because it is so, I'm not going to say because it's FACEROLL, because it's what I call low variance, which is to say there's not a lot of things that can go wrong during your playthrough. It's not crit based, it's not based on any of that stuff, so it kind of streamlines your Guild Boss experience a little bit in terms of you can probably go in, spend 5 or 10 minutes, and get pretty close to what's going to be your best score for the week. Not like before where you had to kind of run it 100 times and wait for that stupid Jericho to get a crit. Gosh, damn. Anyway, this is the HP strat, the FACEROLL comp, whatever you want to call it. This is strat number 1. I hope this is helpful for you guys. Like I said, at the least just throw on some high HP units and go in there and kill the boss. You can slowly refine your team over time. Like I said, I wouldn't pour a ton of resources into this Guild Boss right this minute in case there's other strategies that we're working on that turn out to be better. But if you have this team built already, or you have another high HP team built, I would definitely use it this week to get some decent scores on the chart. And then if it turns out this does turn out to be the best long-term comp for you guys to use, then at that point, feel free to pour some resources into it to get your scores up and help your guild. So with that, I hope this has been helpful for you guys. Try to make these as descriptive but as short as possible. I know this one ran a little bit long, but I hope this is really helpful for you guys. If you did like it, please leave a comment down below letting me know if it was helpful, letting me know what kind of scores you guys are getting, and just say hey. So with that, I hope you guys have a great rest of your day, and stay tuned for more cool stuff in the future.